きることさきっと 悲しき叫びの未来が走馬灯のように浮かぶ
Heyo, HProtech VTuber here. This video is going to be about the Trails series. Essentially this video is aimed at both newcomers who have not heard about this series before, or maybe heard about it offhand, or even people who have dabbled in the series briefly but would like to see some more insight into what the series is, as well as a good starting point into where you start in the series, as well as a bonus section that I can just suggest some other good Falcom games as well. I hope you all enjoy this video, as wherever you're a newcomer or someone who has played a bit and wants more insight, you can hopefully start your own trail, a trail to playing some peak games. Now, before we get into the nitty gritty about what are good starting points and some information about each of the arcs, I would like to explain first who exactly Nihon Falcom are, and what is Legend of Heroes and Trails and where did it start, as well as little bits of other tidbits throughout. In the West, its name is typically shortened down to Nihon Falcom, or even sometimes just Falcom, but in Japan, its full name is Nihon Falcom Kabushiki Kaisha, which is Nihon Falcom Corporation in English. This corporation was founded in 1981 by Masayuki Kato, who used to work in the automotive industry as a computer engineer and got its namesake from the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars, with the slight change of the N at the end becoming an M instead. Before Nihon Falcom was known for its games, it was originally a computer store located in Tachikawa by the name of Computerland Tachikawa. Eventually, this computer store started to recruit programmers and coders who went on to start developing games for Nihon Falcom, starting with their first title by the name of Galactic Wars. During the early 1980s, Nihon Falcom would essentially for a while make a variety of different games, never really settling down to a specific genre, which included their first game, which was a space shooter. They also did a roguelike, some horror games, and even a golf game. These games were mostly restricted to the PC-88 and PC-98 systems, as well as similar other computers including FM7 and Sharp X1. It wasn't until the mid to late 1980s that they started to move into making more fantasy and RPG related games, as they then went on to create Dragon Slayer and the Yi series. During this period is also when the first Legend of Heroes was created in 1989. This is the predecessor to the modern Legend of Heroes and Trails games. This also marked the first time that Nihon Falcom started producing games for not just computers, but for consoles as well, as the two previously mentioned series and other games they started releasing from the mid to late 1980s and up to 1992 would also make their way to the MSX1 and 2, the NES, the Master System, as well as the generations after, including the SNES, Super Famicom, and Genesis. Between 1993 and 1995, they would go back to mostly developing games for PC-98, with only a small sprinkle of games coming out on other platforms. During this period, they also created a new Legend of Heroes game called Prophecy of the Moonlight Witch. This was the first of a trilogy known as the Gaghav Trilogy, and is where the Legend of Heroes series was starting to take shape to what the Legend of Heroes is now, as the first two Legend of Heroes games were more akin to something like Dragon Quest, sharing a similar inside and outside of battle presentation, just like Dragon Quest. The Gaghav Trilogy changed the previous two Legends of Heroes games into something more isometric based, which games like Zwei and then Ys would also eventually adapt as well. From 1996 onwards, they then changed to making purely Windows-based games for a while. Then eventually, from 2001, started to once again make games more than just Windows and PSP. They started to make games for PS2 and DS as well. During this period, in 2004, they would return once again to the Legend of Heroes series, with the birth of their very first Trails game, Trails in the Sky. For a while, the Trails in the Sky series was only available in Japanese, and it wasn't until 2011 that Xseed released an English version of Trails in the Sky for PSP, then eventually releasing an English version for Windows in 2014. Eventually, Xseed then went on to release Trails in the Sky second chapter in 2015 for both PSP and Windows. The final piece of the puzzle, Trails in the Sky third, would take a bit longer to release in English, and Xseed would release in 2017, but only for Windows, skipping the PSP despite the first two Trails in the Sky games having an English release. Over the 2010s and 2020s, we would see more and more of the recent Nihon Falcom games get English releases, including titles in the Ys franchise such as Ys 7 and the remake of 4 called Ys Memories of Celceta, all handled by Xseed in the West. In 2015 and 2016 respectively, we would also get English versions of Trails of Cold Steel 1 and 2, being the last two Nihon Falcom games that Xseed had localized for the West. NIS America would then take over localization and publishing in the West, as in regards to the Ys series, we would then get Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Dana and Ys 9 Monstrum Nox in 2017 and 2021 respectively, while we got English versions of Trails of Cold Steel 3 and Trails of Cold Steel 4 in 2019 and 2020 respectively. Luckily, NIS America, with the help of the Geofront, then went on to localizing and publishing the Crossbow duology in the West. As the next title after Cold Steel, Trails into Reverie does require knowledge and experience from the Crossbow duology, as characters and plot points from those two games are a huge part of Reverie. We finally got the chance to play an English version of Zero in 2022 and Azure in 2023, finally ending the 12-year streak of no Crossbow duology in English outside of the Geofront fan translation projects. I would also like to briefly mention how we also got an English version of Tokyo Xanadu in 2017, albeit that one wasn't localized by either NIS America nor Xseed. This one instead was localized by Axis Games, with the first version for the Vita being chastised somewhat by its translation being a bit off at times. Luckily they improved it for the PS4 and PC release called Tokyo Xanadu EX Plus, and then they further improved it more for the Switch English release that came out 2 months ago this year. I had seen apparently this English Switch script is supposedly going to be patched into the PS4 and PC versions. Now, going back to Trails again, after we got the Crossbow duology in English finally, we were then able to finally play the English version of Trails into Reverie within the same year that Azure came out, as NIS America was literally on the ball and working hard to catch us up on both Zero and Azure so we could get into Reverie. Now, 1 year later, we both get Daybreak and soon Ys X Nordics, with Daybreak 2 scheduled to come out in English early next year. We may be even getting the Trails in the Sky remake potentially at the same time as the Japanese release, or not long afterwards. Basically, we used to have to wait for Trails games to come out in English, but something somewhere at Nihon Falcom must have clicked and aligned perfectly that they are able to work with NIS America better, meaning people such as myself and a couple of my IRL friends who are huge fans of Nihon Falcom games can play them sooner rather than later. I'm glad that both Nihon Falcom and NIS America were able to achieve this, and I can't wait to play both Ys X Nordics soon, the Trails for Daybreak 2 early next year, and eventually the Trails in the Sky remake. Now, I hope this has been some good insight for you guys to learn about and understand Nihon Falcom and the games they developed over the years. But now, we come to the next part, the question that has to be answered. Because there are so many games in this series, you often see people asking, which game do I start first? This can be considered a trickier question to answer, as everyone has different tastes and expectations from JRPGs. Some people are more used to the slower and more methodical JRPGs, while some people are more used to quicker and flashier JRPGs. In my case, I'm good with both types of JRPGs, and I equally enjoy both types of them. To help answer the question, I'm going to briefly explain a little bit about each of the arcs so far, while trying to keep the spoilers as minimal as possible, as well as explain 3 potential starting points for the series and why they may be a good starting point. Trails in the Sky is chronologically the first part of the Trails series. This arc is set in the Lobel Kingdom, which is on the west side of Zemuria and shares a border with both Erebonia and the Calvard Republic, which are further explored in their respective arcs, Cold Steel and Daybreak. Trails in the Sky focuses on 2 young and upcoming bracers by the name of Estelle and Joshua Bright. This is a common term you will come across in this series, as bracers work for the Bracer Guild and essentially act as a Zemuria-wide guild that does a variety of jobs, including investigation, muster slaying, crime prevention, peacekeeping, and even escorting and protecting people. As Estelle and Joshua travel through to the region to train to become bracers, they also come across issues plaguing the different cities and towns they visit, eventually leading to a region-wide catastrophe that they and their new friends have to put a stop to. The next arc, while not having a specific shared name like the other arcs before and after it, can be referred to as the Crossbell arc or the Crossbell duology. This takes place in Crossbell, a state that is landlocked between Erebonia and the Calvard Republic, which is due northeast of the Lobel Kingdom. This arc focuses on Lloyd, leader of the Crossbell Police Department's Special Support Section. This duology shows how Lloyd and the Triple S they do their day-to-day tasks and investigate, which eventually leads to all kinds of mayhem that threaten the peace of Crossbell, including gang wars and the cult. Parts of these 2 games actually take place at the same time as the next arc, Cold Steel, which is pretty damn awesome, as you get to see events occur from 2 different perspectives. The third arc is the Cold Steel arc. In this arc, we finally get to have some insight what Erebonia is like. This arc is the biggest arc in terms of the franchise, as it contains 4 games. This arc focuses on Reen Schwarzer, who practices the 8 Leaves 1 Blade style, and is also a new student at the Thor's Military Academy. Throughout this arc, him and his classmate, and eventually his students, 3rd and 4th game, go to various other cities and towns, doing similar work to the Bracer Guild, with the end goal being to help strengthen the students, not just in aspects of combat, but also to get more insight into the conflicts between various elements inside and outside of Erebonia. This eventually leads into a catastrophe that will threaten not just Erebonia, but all of Zemuria as well. This leads me to the latest arc in the series, known as Trails Through Daybreak. This arc has 2 games, and is set in the Calvard Republic, which is east of Erebonia. This arc focuses on Van Arkwright and employees of his own business, Arkwright Solutions. This business shares some similarities with some of the tasks and jobs the Bracer Guild do, but dips into more shadier stuff, with the entire idea being that he's willing to bend the rules and operate in a grey zone where needed. I'm really glad that we finally get to see what the Calvard Republic is like, as it has been mentioned countless times in the previous game, and through both Daybreak games. We finally get to experience through Vaughn and his friends the trials and tribulations that occur in Calvard Republic. Go for these games. I can't wait to play Daybreak 2 early next year. These summaries are just a mere glimpse at the 4 arcs, and if you really dive into them, you'll find each of them to be truly amazing games, so many enjoyable aspects and elements in. I enjoy all 4 of them equally, even with only having played first Daybreak English so far. I cannot say which arc is my favourite, as I love all of them equally. Now, with the brief summaries of the previous 4 arcs done, we now come to the main question at hand. Where can I start? For this question, I'm going to explain 3 good starting points, with the intent to help people get an idea of where to start. The first starting point is release order. This method involves starting at the Sky arc, then going to the Crossbell arc, the Cold Steel arc, then capping it off with the Daybreak arc. This also makes sure that you go through the games by release order, which also go chronological as well, with some crossover between Crossbell and Cold Steel arc. The second starting point, and this is the starting point that I did, as I had discovered Cold Steel from an ad that plays in Akiba's Trip 2 / Undead and Undressed. What a way to discover something amazing, huh? For the starting point, you could follow along the way that I did, but feel free to change it a bit if you want. For this starting point, I did all 4 Cold Steel games. When I heard about 2 Crossbell games finally coming out in English, I then did all 3 Sky games, prepare for Crossbell, then eventually did Daybreak 1. The third starting point is Trails Through Daybreak. Yes, it may seem a bit of a jump, considering the game's continuity does reference some characters and events from previous arcs, but at the same time, it doesn't flood and overload information or start doing something like, hey, remember thing, remember person, remember event? Ah! It basically feels like a fresh beginning with a character who already has experience under his belt, compared to the previous arcs, where the main character is still learning the ropes, and you learn and grow just as they learn and grow too. From this, you could then go back to the previous games if Daybreak interests you enough to make you go, damn, this is hella good. You want to invest the time and energy checking out the character and world building in the other games. This stuff is good. Now, one thing to note, there is a game that came out between Cold Steel 4 and the first Trails Through Daybreak, called Trails into Reverie. This title involves characters and some plot points from the Crossbell arc as well as the Cold Steel arc, while also having a new set of trials and tribulations that come up. This title further capped off the Crossbell and Cold Steel arcs, as well as setting up some stuff for the Daybreak game. What's even better is I had originally started making this video before they announced it, but now they are making a Trails in the Sky remake, starting with the first game. Some people may think the first arc is a bit outdated and slow compared to the later games, but with this remake, and hopefully Sky's second chapter and third remake, people can play those, as they are essentially bringing the first Trails game arc up to the spec of the newer game. Regardless of the order you pick, I hope you all enjoy the games, because they are so good. Besides the Trails series, Nihon Falcom also has a treasure trove of older and newer titles that are just as amazing. I'm going to recommend 3 other things that they have made that I personally love just as much as the Trails series. This is mostly going to be more of the modern stuff, as some of the older titles, while classics in their own right, have aged somewhat. I've tried to get into some of them, but they just feel a bit rough to me, which is understandable. The Years series, which I mentioned earlier in the brief history, is such a good series. Whether it's the old school pixel art ones, the semi-isometric ones, or the more modern flashy action RPG ones with combos, I've always enjoyed playing them and listening to the kick-ass music they make for them, with 2 of my favourite tracks being Sunshine Coastline from Years 8 and Cloaca Massacre from Years 9, which I will link below in the video description. I'm so glad I was able to attend Tokyo Gaming Show last year and watch Falcom band JDK perform some tracks from Trails and Years games, including a song from the next game I'm going to recommend after this. For those who want to chase the series, pretty much get all of them on PC, while all of the newer ones are available on PS4 and Switch as well. They are also slowly bringing the older titles as well to PS4 and Switch, as you can get Years Origins on both, and soon Years Open Felghana when it releases in English. I assume they'll also eventually bring Ark of Naphtysm as well to the consoles. one last thing before I moved on, I really look forward to Ys X Tokyo Xanadu. This game was a surprise anime, as it's a game that combines stuff from both Ys and Cold Steel. It's an action RPG like the former, but has many elements from Cold Steel, including the graphics, chapters, and daily life system, as well as a similar system to the Quartz system that Trails uses. I got 100% trophies on both the original Vita version and the updated and enhanced PS4 version. For those looking to get into it, the enhanced version is also on the PC and Switch, got an English port of it as well 2 months ago. Falcom are currently working on a follow-up, nearly 10 years later after they made the first one, and I'm really keen to see how this one will be, whether it will be like the first Tokyo Xanadu, with some improvements to make it more modern, or if they completely change and overhaul this new one. One really neat thing I like about Tokyo Xanadu is how they incorporated an actual idol group into the game, which does the theme song as well as some other songs you hear in the game. It was nice hearing the theme song live at Tokyo Gaming Show. And for my final recommendation, The Legend of Noita Boundless Trails. This is quite the peculiar game, as it's a spin-off set in an alternate universe, with somewhat of a link to the Trails series, as the main character is potentially considered to be Toa Herschel's grandfather. Toa is a character introduced in the first Cold Steel game. Anyway, this game is actually quite enjoyable, and is overall a really fun action RPG. Despite being a PSP game that got ported to PC, PS4, and the Switch, it's got quite a decent amount of content, which you unlock even more in New Game Plus, making it surprisingly good for a spin-off non-canon game. Despite being a PSP game, they touched up the game nicely for modern platforms, and improved the controls due to modern platforms having more inputs than the PSP did. I highly recommend it for fans of action RPGs. These are just my personal recommendations, and I'm sure you can find not just these, but other enjoyable titles of theirs that you can enjoy yourself as well. For those still watching, thank you for your patience with this long video. It was longer than I originally intended it to be, as I found it pretty fun doing some research and exploration around the internet to help understand things for making this video. But now we've come to the end, and I hope this video has helped people, whether it's deciding on where to start for the games, or even just learning about Nihon Falcom, their history, some of their games, or even getting to hear a sample of some of their music, which I put throughout this video in the background. I wish I'd gotten into Nihon Falcom games earlier, as it wasn't until the first Cold Steel that I'd probably gotten a chance to play one of their games, and I was hooked immediately. After Cold Steel, I waited patiently for Cold Steel 2, and also played some of the other games as well, including Ys Memories of Celceta on Vita, Ys Origins Oath and Arc on Steam, which I really enjoyed. Over the years, I would eventually catch up on all the Trails games, meaning I was ready for Reverie and Daybreak, and eventually the new one, Kai, as that also features a mixture of recent and older faces. I am, and always will be, a huge fan of Nihon Falcom and their games, as I always enjoy the games they make, wherever it's the cool ass worlds and lore, the characters and their cool art styles, the gameplay, and even the super amazing music they make for their games, which, my god, is so good. But no, I just love this stuff. Whenever I go to Japan on holiday, I love to go to places that sell Nihon Falcom goods, as well as attend whatever current events and such that is going on during my holiday, which includes stuff such as a pop-up store around their new game, or even other events like Tachikawa Anikan, and if they even happen to line up as well, a collab cafe. I wish I had attended the Trails of Cold Steel 10th anniversary cafe last year, but for some reason that cafe event was actually just before I went on holiday in September last year. No, maybe next year to have something cool for a cafe, that'd be hella cool. But nah, I'm also keen to listen to the Falcom band JDK once again at Tokyo Game Show, as hearing them live on the last day of Tokyo Game Show last year my god, it was so damn good, I love it. But yeah, there we have it. Again, I hope you all enjoyed this video. I want to make some more stuff like this. Not as long though, like this one got a little bit too long. I want to make stuff more around about 10 to 15 minutes. So with that, make sure you guys subscribe. That way you can be notified about any other videos I make. Because I want to inform people about other stuff, not just Nihon Falcom, but I'd like to do some other stuff for other games as well. So by subscribing, you'll be alerted to like anytime I release those videos, as well as some other stuff I make, which includes like montages from random games that I'm playing, whether it's like funny stuff that happens or cool moments. My streams as well, because I stream on Twitch. Even just my uploads from music games, because I'm quite the music game fan, and I post like quite a few good scores when I get the chance. Or even just like my random videos, where I just like, you know, I'll break a game or make something silly happen, and it's funny. But yeah, anyway, thanks again guys, and hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys later.
I'm Juke Hacker, and I demand some cameos. Starting with this guy here, who's minding his own business.
What? Yeah, play the Trail series, I guess. I don't know.
The reason why I like the Trail series is because there's so many of them and they all link up together, and they all have improvements of like different systems, and then like all the characters come together. And the other reasons why I like the Trail series is because the world building is so big, and like they have like continuations between each series, slowly building up. If you're planning to like continue the whole series, you could go like start with Trails in the Sky first chapter and work your way from there. That should be pretty good too. Alright, hope you enjoyed the series. Bye.
So I've played Trails of Cold Steel 1 and 2, and I think both are great games. I think 2 was the stronger because it builds on the great work that the first one does. I think the gameplay is fantastic. I like the orbment system in it. I like the strategic nature of it. I think it's also quite challenging if you have it on a higher difficulty level, especially the first time around, which I did with Trials of Cold Steel 2. The characters are great. Reen's a good, strong male protagonist, and then the 4 leading ladies, as it were, Emma, Fee, Alyssa, and of course Laura, who's my personal favourite, are all great. And the world building is another really strong part about the games and of the series of a whole. I'm looking forward to delving deeper into that. I'm playing Trials from Zero next, and then I've got Trials of Cold Steel free to play after that. So looking forward to all of that. Nihon Falcom just make great games, don't they?
I think one of the reasons you should play the Trail/Kaseki series is the world building. This series is probably some of the best world building out of any video games of all time. Everything builds off each other. The NPCs, the characters, everything, all the way up to like the final games. Like now in the Calvert arc, it's like a lot of shit is just coming together.
Why do I love the Trail series? Well, how long have you got? It's impossible to put into words really, but I'd like to think that every fan has a similar kind of mindset that when they find something that resonates with them, they just feel a sense of belonging to it. It's like a second home to me. No other series makes me feel the way that Trails does. When Trails stuck its hook into me all those years back, I knew it would be the series that I'd see as the peak of JRPGs. It's like when you go to a new country for the first time and it ticks every box off your personal list of desires. It's just a series that was made for someone like me, and long may it continue.